Right, welcome to New Horizons, and if you do have a mobile phone, if you would like to put it on silent, thank you. Right, huge welcome for the first time here for Stephen Mera with Phenomena. Steve is a parapsychologist and paranormal investigator, and he's intimately involved in training programs with Manchester's Association of Paranormal Investigation and Training. He's authored many magazine articles, co-hosts all the W's planetxlive.co.uk, and is editor of Phenomena magazine, amongst other things. Steve has also worked for NATO, and tonight will cover some of his experiences and findings from the past 30 years as a researcher. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stephen Mera.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay? Okay. First of all, I'd like to give just a brief introduction how I got into this field. It was about 30 years ago when I first went on my first investigation in 1983. That was in Liverpool in April of 1983, so just over 30 years in the field. My father got me into the subject. My father was an investigator of UFOs, paranormal. As a kid, I just grew up normally, skateboarding, that sort of thing, you know, as you do, play football. But when my father got me into reading all his books, and I kind of had adopted them by the time I was age about 15, and then I got reading them. I remember the first one I actually read was a Brad Steiger UFO book, and then I started reading about crop circles and then paranormal things, and then Chariots of the Gods fell in my lap, and then basically from there on I've always had an interest in what you might refer to as the unknown, the strange, the profound, anomalous phenomena. After leaving school, I was so interested in the subject, I kind of hit the libraries, and I was really surprised to find so many books in the library on the subject. I didn't think there was many people writing about these sorts of things. So I exhausted the library for about 2 years and read everything it could possibly offer. I think the first book I read was Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, and I think I read it about 9 times. I think that was the most popular book at that time. From there on, I decided to join a number of organisations. I joined the British UFO Research Association, went through their training programme, and I was with them for many years, to the point I became the regional investigative coordinator for them, and I also instituted a View4 UFO course to different people who were joining the organisation. I also joined NARO. NARO was the Northern Anomalies Research Organisation, and I used to work closely with Jenny Randalls, the prolific UFO author, and Peter Huff, and we used to do quite a number of investigations. And that was when I first got involved in writing for television. And the first thing I wrote for was the Strange But True series with Michael Aspel. If those can remember that, go back far to, I mean, it was a very interesting show and it did quite well. It got eventually took over by Uri Geller, bought the series, and it became Encounters, Strange But True Encounters when he took over, and then it lasted about another season and ended. From then on, I went on to numerous other different organisations, too many to list today. But I really wanted to make my own. I really wanted to sort of get my foot in the door in something in Manchester, because that was where I was living. And it was just coincidentally my father, who was an investigator with MAPIT, the old MAPIT, which was Manchester Aerial Phenomena Investigation Team. Now that was based in Stockport, and it was run by a gentleman called Dr. David Rees. He'd recently passed away at that time, and I took over the organisation. in 1989. So it's been running since 1974 and still is running today. Further on in 1996, I formed the scientific establishment of parapsychology, which I founded that year. That's also a Manchester-based establishment. But that is preliminary to look at extrasensory perception, innate abilities, those sort of things. So it's basically it's a parapsychology department. I studied in that field for quite some years. I obtained my psychology degree, and then onto a parapsychology diploma and another degree, and so on and so forth. And it's primarily it's about the investigation of how people's brains work, you know, how we perceive and how or why certain people should have certain experiences. Try and find rational explanations. That's my job. I come from a science background, so I like evidence. I'm not here to tell you about all these wonderful stories when I can't provide anything for you to believe. You know, at the end of the day, you know, we do listen to a lot of people talk about things on these subjects, and very rarely do we actually get evidence. It's all very interesting, nevertheless, but if I don't find the evidence, I tend to walk away. So my job over the last 30 years was a matter of finding evidence. Joining NATO, that was certainly an experience, RAF Weatherfield in Essex. I was a communications officer, and there was nothing to do with UFOs there. So, you know, what I can tell you is that I never heard anything about UFOs. Nobody ever really talked about them. And simply was just getting my head down and doing my job. After which, leaving there for a few years, I got into writing. I wrote my first book, which was the A to Z of the Paranormal, just a basic general book, like a quick A to Z guide. And then I studied a little bit more in fields of sociology, and what you might refer to is forensic parapsychology. And that basically is how we look at people, how they react in regarding paranormal phenomena. And the certain strings of conscious behaviour that they have in regards to those experiences, all very technical. After which I was consulted by, around about 1999, I was consulted by a number of establishments in the country. The first one to contact me was the Ministry of Defence, funny enough. They were having some disturbances in one of their buildings. And in Deansgate, Manchester, was a huge building called Sunlight House. And it was built by a Russian gentleman called Joseph Sigorsky, but he was nicknamed Joe Sunlight. And there were 14 floors, huge building, and they were having paranormal disturbances taking place there. Now, how this came to be was the staff working there didn't want to work there when it got dark. They were having experiences, people claimed to have seen apparitions. So, and that was all a bit, well, okay, all right, let's check into it. And now my job also basically is to go in with a team of investigators and to find out the truth about exactly what is going on, and is there any truth to it? And can we put this a stop? Can we put this to rest? At the end of the day, with these problems, that staff won't work, go all the way up to management, and they don't know how to deal with it, because it certainly doesn't matter how many management courses you do, it doesn't teach you how to train your staff not to be afraid of something that goes bump in the night. They had a problem. And that all the way up to the Manchester Public Relations Office, who contacted us to try and help. So I went in there with 36 investigators posed as electrical engineers, because we weren't allowed to tell anybody what we were doing. We all had hard hats and belts and tools on. It was all quite funny. But we did find some unusual readings there, such as high EMF and geomagnetic fields there. We found no evidence of the paranormal phenomena whilst we were there, but the reports did flood in. The security team's reports were fascinating. Some of their reports indicated that they were giving chase to apparitions on some occasions because they heard them, they saw them, they thought somebody was actually broken into the building, and they gave chase. And they only gave up after a while, sometimes by once seeing an apparition, so they should just go through a wall or a door, a locked door as well. So they realised obviously something wasn't quite normal. And these reports were being made generally every night for the management, and they submitted them to us as part of that investigation. We concluded the investigation about 9 months later, and we did manage to help them in regarding bringing down the EMF and geomagnetic fields. The whole building, the way it was laid out, the way they have the equipment, natural electromagnetic fields, naturally induced into that environment by just bad wiring, bad layout, and generally just bad construction, all added to the problem. There was even a number of occasions where there was an acute audio waves being emitted from pieces of equipment, what you rightly refer to as infrasound, and that over a long period of time can affect people adversely. So we did manage to help them in some way. So the Ministry of Defence kind of put me forward, and since then I've been working with city councils, housing associations, military establishments, all those sort of things that you guys don't get to hear about, because paranormal things do take place just in their establishments as well, and they need to know the truth. So what they tend to do is they ask me and my team to go in and write a report to find out if we can conclude there is paranormal disturbances taking place. At the end of the day, landlords of homes have a responsibility to their tenants, and be that those landlords really do want to know what's going on. Unfortunately, some people, believe it or not, do say they're being haunted by paranormal phenomena just to move, basically, just to get out of that area because they don't like it there. And they quickly cottoned on to this, so we try and go in there and establish the possibility is something taking place or isn't. So we do submit reports to them, and then they act upon them. So we kind of do that on a more official basis. So we're not like a normal organisation, as you say. We don't go to stately homes and pubs and things like that. We don't. The tenner penny. You can go, I guarantee within a mile around here, you can probably go and find a grey lady or a white lady in some haunted pub somewhere. But nevertheless, though, we tend to do things more on an official basis. So this is an introduction to MAPIT, and the acronyms stayed the same as in MAPIT, but the names have changed slightly. It's now Manchester's Association of Paranormal Investigation and Training. It was preliminary about UFOs, but now people are interested in all sorts of things associated. The psychic and paranormal ramifications to some UFO experiences are quite bizarre, so you have to take that on board as well. So we cover everything, and more so the investigation and training purpose now. We run the British Investigators Training course, which is the most comprehensive course of its kind, which teaches people how to investigate pretty much anything that they might face out in the field. I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Excuse me. I've just got over a cold, so you might hear me splutter a few times. MAPIT was first constructed in 1974. Obviously, the acronyms have changed in 1990. The training in education, residential investigations, corporate investigations, analysis and data collection, traumatic and profound experiences. Those are the things that we cover under MAPIT. Okay, not the normal run-of-the-mill. The British Investigators Training course is basically what it is it's a course that's put together by the leading academics in the world. In other words, if I want to go and find out something about Earth-like phenomena, I'll go to the world's leading expert, which is Paul Devereaux, and I'll talk to him, and I'll say, Paul, I need some information about you, and we're putting a course together, and da-da-da-da-da. And this is how it pretty much goes. Over the period of 7 years of constructing this course, we managed to get every single person specialised in their field to submit information to the course. So basically everybody's getting the real raw, proper information from the academics in regarding how to approach the subject, how to investigate it scientifically, and how to research it thoroughly. There's more details about the ITC course on our website. We also do an advanced course as well, and right through to the parapsychology BU, B1, B2 stages. Let's talk about some of the investigations, okay? Now, as I say, I've been involved in it for 30 years, so you can imagine I've seen some strange things over 30 years. And I don't mean just one day a week. I mean, I was doing literally every day. You know, I think the longest investigations I've done 72 hours without any sleep. 3 different investigations back to back, just because we've been so busy. This is an incident that took place. It was in August of 1996. And it was in a newspaper, Lancashire Evening News it was, and this was a feature called Spooky Spills. Spooky Spills Scare Family from Home. Quite unusual. And when you read the article, it goes on to say, Mr. and Mrs. Gardner were claiming that strange water formings were taking place in their bungalow, which is in Rochdale, and that their council had been out, and the council didn't know what was going on. So we got involved. We were hired by Rochdale City Council to go in and try and find out what is going on. Now I'll be straight and honest with you guys. When I go out and investigate these things, most of the time there's a rational explanation. Sometimes it's misidentification, sometimes it's just, you know, they've been watching too much paranormal stuff, you know, and they kind of get it into their heads that things like that happen. Very rarely do we actually find proper paranormal phenomena taking place there and then. This was the first time. This is a case that turned me around, actually. I mean, I was very sceptical when I first started. Of course, you can understand that. I came from a scientific background. You know, I'd worked and tutored in parapsychology departments. It's my job to find a rational explanation. Get a feather in the cap from the parapsychology department, and we can prove something to be rational. And of course, this is what turned my life upside down, this particular case, because I just cannot believe what happened. The family lived in a prefabricated bungalow. Now, those prefabricated bungalows, as you can see, were only supposed to be temporary, but the family had lived there for 14 years. It was only a small building, it's kind of metal sheeting. Now, if you cast your mind back, if you think back that far, of August 1996, the UK was going through one of its worst heat waves at that time. It was pretty much 80s and 90s every single day, and there was a hosepipe down right across the country. So it was quite surprising to find an article in the paper at that time saying, all this water, where's all this water coming from? Okay, so it was my job to go in there and find out where exactly it is coming from. First thing I noticed when I got in there was there was a log sheet. Now, these log sheets were provided by Rochdale City Council, and they asked the family, after going in and investigating, trying to find out where's all this water coming from, to write down just, you know, when the incidents happened, where they happened, that sort of thing. So they've got a log of events. You could clearly see by walking around, watermarking, you can see stains on the walls and on the ceilings, and it's clearly a pattern caused by a dried up watermark. So water had been present, you know, in the property. We could clearly see that it had been on the ceiling, that it had been on the walls. And you could see the stains around the house. Mr. Gardner said that he took me into his lounge and everything was wrapped up in plastic. The settee had plastic sheeting, the carpet had plastic sheeting, there was plastic sheeting over everything, over the TV, the radio, the fire. And he got all this plastic in because apparently these outbursts of water just come and there's no explanation for it, there's no warning for it, he doesn't know when it's going to happen, so he's got to prepare for it. And you could clearly smell that really bad damp smell when he got in the house as well. So you understood that obviously things have been damaged, you know, things have got rotten, the carpet had got wet, or the curtains and so on and so forth. So that was generally the feel of the home. Now, as time went on, these are the sort of things that started to take place. There was quite a lengthy investigation. Water formings on the ceilings and walls and doors. And your lamp raining in the kitchen. Okay, now there was this, I've never come across a case like this before until I watched a television show about a month or so ago, and it was called Paranormal Witness. In season 2 of Paranormal Witness, there was one such episode where somebody was claiming that these water pourings were taking place, and I was drinking a cup of tea and I sat there like, oh, crikey, another case. I couldn't believe it. I thought, such a unique investigation, this one, but certainly not the only one, so I was quite surprised to hear about that. But raining in the kitchen, you can imagine my surprise on the 4th day when I walked into the kitchen and I saw Mr. Gardner sat there in the kitchen with his brolly up, and it was raining. It's hard to imagine that, but I'll explain that a little bit more in depth. I'm going to try and take you there as it happened. Objects found to have been moved, stacked and arranged, objects suddenly appearing from nowhere. That was an apportation, it did take place. Paintings flew off the walls, strange audible disturbances, unusual odours, electrical items regularly faulting, electrical items working without even being plugged in, objects being thrown around. This is what I would refer as typical poltergeist phenomena. Now, I've been in the field for 30 years and I've only investigated 4 cases of poltergeist disturbances. I can say are poltergeist disturbances, only 4 in 30 years. So, you know, when you go on YouTube and type in poltergeist, you get all these thousands of videos, don't you? Poltergeist here, poltergeist there, and it leads you to believe they're very, very common, but they're not. You do get interactive hauntings, but let me say, do not mistake phenomena such as hauntings, be it interactive or intelligent, if that's what you want to call it, and poltergeist is a whole different thing altogether. Indicating turning point here in my belief. The railing in the kitchen did it for me, to begin with. Now this is basically how phenomena works, like poltergeist infestations. We know about hauntings. We know we've all talked and heard about things like this. We've seen the television shows, haven't we? You know, we have the interactive hauntings, we have the residual hauntings, you know, where we have those kind of events, like recorded events played back. Sometimes on a small scale in a house, such as you see an apparition walking through a wall where once there was a door. Okay, residual phenomena. On the grander scale, exactly the same phenomena takes place in the Peak District and the Lake District. And we get phantom bombers seen in the sky.